The court sitting at the South Gauteng High Court has declared the gratuitous display of the old #old flag as hate speech. Let's hear reaction to that judgment.
Preliminary comments for now. As we have stated in our affidavit as well, former President Nelson Mandela said that if you take away, or if you want to take away the freedom of others, that means that you are yourself a prisoner of hatred. Now, I think the important point to stress from Afriforum's side is this judgment would not directly affect our actions, because as we've said from the beginning of this case, Afriforum does not display the old South African flag, and Afriforum actively discourages people from displaying the flag. So our involvement in this case is not because we have some urge or need to display the flag. Our concern is somewhat different. Our concern is that we have not found sufficient examples yet of government or the state dealing with social issues, albeit important social issues, through the use of the force of the rule of law, or effectively at the end of the day, the police. Our concern is that dealing with social issues like this by banning certain things, at least to a certain extent, or preventing people by law from expressing themselves in a certain way, does not change their opinions. And the problem that we believe the Nelson Mandela Foundation is trying to resolve has not been resolved by simply preventing people from expressing their views if they still hold certain views. So Afriforum's concern and involvement with this matter is because we cherish the right to freedom of expression, and we are concerned. We actually just came from another court case which deals with hate speech. We are concerned about where the line should be drawn between freedom of expression and hate speech. In our view, as we've argued in this case, displaying something, displaying a symbol, displaying a flag, even if it's a very offensive flag or a very offensive symbol, simply displaying it, in our view, is not sufficient for it to be hate speech. For it to be hate speech, it has to be coupled with some form of a call to action, to actually inflict harm or something to that effect. So that is our concern with this matter. Obviously, we have always been and we will always be open for discussion, and we would gladly take up the Nelson Mandela Foundation to engage in further discussions regarding the issue. Regarding the content of the judgment, obviously we would have to go through the judgment thoroughly and prepare what our response would be.
Mr. It's based on those comments, do you then say you do not agree with the majority judgment?
Well, if the judgment is simply that displaying a symbol is hate speech, or hate speech because of the fact that it is very offensive, that is something that we take issue with. So our preliminary reaction would be that we do not agree with the judgment. We do not agree that it would solve the issues that the Nelson Mandela Foundation are trying to solve. But as I said, we will study the judgment and then provide a more comprehensive response.
Mr. Atan, just your reaction or clarification of people who might want to understand what this means. For example, can people display it in their homes, as some people might do?
You know, you're asking a very interesting question, because we actually have been approached by a family. And next week we'll be engaging a family which have the flag in their home. And I think it's important that, maybe I should take a step back, that the judgment is very clear. That we did not say the flag should be banned. And I want to use this again, and I want to emphasize that we did not say that. And the judge did not say the flag is banned. He said gratuitous display, if it's not for art, for artistic purposes, if it's not for dramatic, whatever you want to then communicate, you can. But where you just, because you are disaffected, because you hold some opinion, and you want to then display the flag, the judgment is clear that in that case you are causing hurt, you are causing harm, and the judge in fact decoupled these things. And of course I'm relying here on our attorney who's here, Rupert Kendi, who actually can give a greater a better explanation of this. So people can display the flag. Except, of course, in an instance where a domestic worker then finds it offensive. I can imagine that my mother would find it offensive because of what I said about the history that we have. And until such time that we actually acknowledge that kind of pain, we're going nowhere. Because we're then going to argue that this does not help in building South Africa that we want. this is a building block. It's a process, a long process. It can't be that 25 years on, we're still arguing whether you can display the flag or not. It should find it in many South Africans' hearts to say, actually, it's not right.
Is it clear, if you can call it punishment, what punishment people could face if they do go against this?
The judge again was clear. He said it's not for the police. And again, I'm urging Afriforum to read the judgment clearly. He said, this is not for the police. It's for people to then know that there will be some kind of a fine. So we're not asking for some custodial judgment to be passed on people, criminality that would then be passed on. And in fact, both Rupert Kendi and Thembeka Ngugatobi were clear that it's not in our interest as the Nelson Mandela Foundation to now suddenly find people being imprisoned for that. Is to then have some kind of other ways of ensuring that there's some community work that you can do and to also atone for what you've done.
Okay, anyone more?
Yes.
Look, thank you very much. From the African National Congress, this is a national victory, not only for the ANC, but for all South Africans. We need to know and derive our wisdom and lessons from history. Today in Germany, a Nazi swastika is banned. You know the reason why is it banned? Because it's a symbol that represents an abominable, abhorrent, and a genocide against humanity. Equally, apartheid was found by the United Nations to be one of the greatest criminal acts against humanity. Now, any symbol that represents that order, it's a repetition of wrong acts of history, and it cannot be promoted. And equally so, we stand with the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Human Rights Commission, the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation for having brought this application, because we are running a risk of promoting racial bigotry and racial supremacy. And today the world is in trouble because of narrow nationalist approaches, be it economic, be it social, be it political, and be it otherwise. The world is in trouble. So we cannot allow that particular act to continue in our country, where a symbol, a flag, which was banned and which was regarded by the world as a crime against humanity, to be promoted. But secondly, it would lead us into a constitutional crisis. You can't have two flags flying under the same constitution. It's a constitutional crisis, so it cannot be promoted. People, like the court have said, you can use that flag for other reasons, be it academic, journalistic, artistic, and otherwise, but it cannot be used for purposes of politics. It cannot be used to attract emotions. It's dangerous because it would perpetuate a system that was disregarded by the apex institution in the world in terms of multilateralism, which is the United Nations. And I think it would be correct. I would like to advise Afriforum, don't take even chances of trying to appeal this, because you are going to look foolish and you are going to look like right wings for granted. So I would advise you as Afriforum to work on building a better South Africa for all. And equally we say, not only racial bigotry is a problem to a country, including the issue of corruption. We need to say it, because using a flag, it's equal and tantamount to being corrupt, using a flag that is not recognized by the Constitution. So even our brothers and sisters and those in leadership who are perpetuating acts of corruption, they are equally as guilty as people who would like to promote or reverse Nazism today in South Africa in 2019. It cannot be promoted. There is no future for racial bigotry. There is no future for economic exclusion. There is no future for corruption in this country. We need to make it all clear to all and sundry, because we cannot build a country out of artificial approach in terms of principle. We cannot apply selective morality to the application of the rule of law. There's a rule of law, there's a constitution, there's a national flag. Let us all be loyal to it. Let us all be loyal to the system. Let us not create another Orania which will have a separate flag. Let's all be loyal to the Constitution and to the Republic and stand and uphold the Constitution for what it stands for, rather than creating a parallel state.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Well, we've been bringing you reaction on the steps of the Equality Court, which has today ruled that the display of the old South African flag constitutes hate speech. Now, we saw earlier on Afriforum speaking about how they have no intentions to showcase the old South African flag, but they do not, however, agree with today's judgment. They say they'll continue to interact and have dialogue with the Nelson Mandela Foundation on this very matter. The ANC, they're saying, well, today's ruling is a national victory. We'll continue to keep you updated and bring you more reactions to that story.